When I think about Alzheimer's disease, a word that often comes to mind is lost. A lost memory, lost independence, a lost family member. My grandfather had this disease. And I still remember when he'd sit on the couch, look at me and say, "Who are you?" I remember how confused I was. I remember that it got worse, to the point where he couldn't even recognize my grandmother, someone he'd been married to for 60 years. But I also remember the good times, the times we were at the park playing baseball. During those moments, I thought everything was great, nothing was the matter. Turns out that's not really true. Alzheimer's disease had already begun. This disease doesn't start with symptoms. It starts years, often decades before, with changes occurring in our brain. These changes live inside us, quietly. This is a big problem we now face. We know that if we want to go and fight this disease, the first thing we have to do is go and find it. So scientists are working on this question, and we've actually made great progress. We now have tools, brain scans. Brain scans can identify early changes in Alzheimer's disease years before symptoms. But there's a catch. You get injected with radioactive drugs. You have to find a large specialty center. And you get bills. Bills for up to $10,000. Bills that insurance companies often won't even cover. This is a serious problem because every single person is at risk for this disease. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's take patient A. Patient A is retired. She lives at home. She has great health insurance. The nearest specialty center, 10 minutes down the road. Her family has a background in the healthcare system. They know how to navigate it. For her, there might be a chance. But then there's patient B. Patient B is still working. She lives paycheck to paycheck. She does not have great health insurance. That specialty center, that's over 4 hours away. Patient B may have the exact same disease as patient A. But for her, there's almost no chance we'll find it early. So, this brings me to a problem. Early detection is important, and it has to be accurate. But it has to be scalable, has to be affordable, it has to be accessible. Our lab is working on a tool to do just this. So what is it? A game, a memory game. Now, I'm not talking about those Sudoku puzzles you do every morning. I'm not talking about those brain games promised to boost your IQ by 20 points. I'm talking about games rooted in science. Games built off decades of neuroscience research. Games that are designed explicitly to tax the circuitry in the brain most vulnerable to Alzheimer's disease. Before I talk about our game, I first need to talk about the science behind it. And this brings me to the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a small structure buried deep inside our brains. The hippocampus means seahorse in Latin. Well, why? Well, it turns out if you take it out, turn it to its side, you squint really hard, maybe, and just maybe, you can kind of see a seahorse in that. Okay, it's not a big structure. It's not much bigger than a grape, but it plays such an important role in our everyday lives. It helps us with a problem we all face, interference. Every day as we go about our lives, we have very similar memories, and the hippocampus helps us keep them distinct. Let me give you an example. Let's say you go to your favorite grocery store. On the way out, you know where you parked. On the left side over there, right next to that oak tree. But that's not very easy because you've parked in many different spots in this exact same parking lot. Maybe last week you parked to the right. Maybe yesterday you got really lucky and you parked right in front. How do you know today you parked right there? Well, that's where the hippocampus comes in. It helps us take these really similar memories and make them more distinct. But these are the same structures that are attacked first in Alzheimer's disease. So early on, these similar memories, they can start to blur together. We designed a game that gets at this specific ability. How's it work? Well, it's actually pretty simple. There's two parts. Part one, I'm gonna call it the study phase. We just show you some pictures. Maybe we'll show you a rubber duck or a Rubik's Cube. So far, it's not too bad, right? Okay, now comes the test phase. We just asked you a simple question. We're gonna show you some pictures, and did you see this one before in the study phase? Some pictures are gonna be brand new. For example, this bottle of lotion. Some are gonna be ones you saw before, like this Rubik's Cube. But there'll be some pictures that are similar, but not identical. This rubber duck is actually a little bit different than the one you saw earlier. This is where the science happens. Your brain has to resist the urge of saying, yeah, I saw a rubber duck. It has to say, oh wait, this one's a little different. This is what the hippocampus is so important for. So our game is simple. It takes 5 to 10 minutes. It can be done on your phone. It can even be done at home. You don't need a doctor there. You can do it by yourself. Great. So it's accessible. It's scalable. But is it helpful? To answer this question, our lab asked 3 complementary questions. First, could identify early signs of cognitive impairment. Second, could identify those quiet changes before symptoms. And third, could it tell us which people would develop symptoms in the future? So to do this, we gave our game to thousands of people. We first asked, could it identify early impairment? It turns out that it could. It could identify which people were already showing early signs. This is huge. Identifying impairment isn't always so easy. It often takes hours of testing at a hospital. It takes year-long waits to see a specialist. Our game took 5 minutes, your phone, and you at home. But I told you earlier that this disease doesn't start with impairment. It starts before that. Can we identify people before any symptoms? This is a harder question. To do this, we took people who had no symptoms. They underwent hours of testing. They aced all the tests. They went and they saw those specialists. They were told, you're doing great, no symptoms. But then they had those $10,000 brain scans. And those told a very different story. There were already some people showing early signs of this disease. And our game can identify who those people are. It could listen and hear those quiet changes. Great. But there's one more thing. I told you earlier that people can have these brain changes and be fine for 20 years. Or they could be 6 months away. I don't think we treat these people equally. I would want to know if my grandfather was close to decline. So we asked, could our game identify these people? It turns out it could. It identified which people were most likely to develop symptoms in the future. This is where we're going. A scalable, accessible, affordable tool. But when I talk about these tools, I've neglected one other thing. There's another tool out there gaining a lot of traction. Blood tests. Blood tests are taking off. For the first time ever, we can identify early signs of Alzheimer's disease from a simple blood draw. This is great. Blood draws are routine at almost every clinic around the country. These tests have got FDA approval. They're even being incorporated into hospitals as we speak. But does this make our game obsolete? So we asked this question by taking 1,000 people. They did our game, and they did our blood test. And then we followed them for the next 5 years. What did we find? People who had signs of Alzheimer's disease in their blood were more likely to have symptoms in the future. But if they also did bad on our game, well, that risk skyrockets. They're 5 times more likely to develop symptoms in the future. This is where we're going. A blood test and a game as scalable tools. Together, they travel much farther and much faster than a brain scanner can. We can use this information to say, who do we prioritize for future treatments? Who should we monitor a little more closely? Who needs more testing? This is not science fiction. This is the future. A future where we don't wait until a grandfather doesn't recognize his grandson. A future where early detection doesn't require $10,000 scans. A future where a word to describe Alzheimer's disease isn't lost, it's found. Alzheimer's disease does begin quietly, but we now have the tools that can listen and hear these early changes. They can hear these changes for patient A, but they can also hear these changes for patient B. Thank you.